great deal, and with a great deal of passion about the Dharma traditions. And I'm curious, almost in zooming out, what motivates you to do that? What gets you so excited to tell people, especially it would seem in the West, about Dharma?
Well, you know, it's actually my journey ultimately for my own enlightenment, for my own self, for my own benefit. And sharing becomes very natural because we live in a society where people need to understand each other's traditions better. But the primary goal of self-inquiry and discovery is to understand it for myself, to be a better person, and to live in accordance with the Dharma. So I've lived as born and raised as a Hindu, but I've lived in a very westernized setting. I have a very westernized education, westernized careers and business I've had. And this is my home, and my kids are born and raised in this country, so I'm an American. But I feel that there is a difference in the Dharma from the Abrahamic religions. And this difference enriches the American tapestry. It enriches it by bringing new ideas, new possibilities, and we need to learn from each other. So by dissolving myself, if I were to dissolve myself and just become like another American and deny my distinctiveness, I would not be helping make a contribution to this society. There are many problems with difference, because the difference can also create tensions and separations, but it is not necessarily the case. You can enjoy difference, you can celebrate difference, you can say diversity is a form of difference. Like there's differences in cuisine, in music, in fashions, in poetry, and they don't create problems, they are celebrated. So we can have differences in human cultures and in perspectives of the divine, ideas of the nature of God and the nature of self, that, you know, we have different approaches and we've had different experiences in our traditions. So I feel that difference is something, one of the signature elements, I would say, of my thinking is to emphasize difference as a very important thing to understand, to preserve and protect, and to do it with mutual respect.
So it sounds like it's one of your goals is to enable Americans, enable people in the West to understand this element of difference. And there's a large and growing Hindu community in the US. What would you like from them? What are you hoping for the broader Hindu community?
Well, I think the Hindu community is a bit confused and lost, because they have many misconceptions about being American. I addressed a lot of Hindu communities, groups all over. I was at a student camp yesterday in Pennsylvania where they brought Hindu student leaders from various universities and we had a workshop. So I meet with a lot of different kinds of community people. Hindus have the false impression that to be properly Americanized, fully Americanized, you somehow have to shed this baggage of your past. And that's not really true. Because in America you can be an Irish American, Italian American, Jewish American, Hispanic American, African American, and that doesn't make you less American. So you could be a Hindu American, and there's no reason to be afraid of it or to be embarrassed of it. This is what I tell people. The second problem is that the generation that came as immigrants, my generation, have been too busy making money, becoming successful, getting established, which is typically what immigrants do. So they haven't spent a whole lot of time raising their kids to understand their own tradition. So they're working so hard that the kids are sort of, they understand Hinduism through the stereotypes that they see in books and media. What I've called the caste, cows and curry stereotype. I coined that term, caste, cows and curry. That sort of nice, exotic stuff.
So through a very American lens, actually.
Yes.
They learn, just like any other Americans, about Hinduism.
Yes.
And then, I guess that proves difficult then to internalize the concept.
Yes, and I think that a lot of Hindu preachers, it's not just the layperson you could excuse. A lot of Hindu gurus and swamis and preachers have modulated Hinduism into a language of Christianity to make it more presentable, and in the process of compromising. For example, I was having a discussion with a guy yesterday who's talking to Hindus, and he's a Hindu preacher, and he's explaining the soul. So I said, but the self is the Atma, and the soul, he said, what's the difference? So I said, well, soul is not in animals and plants, Atman is. Soul doesn't reincarnate, Atman does. So he hadn't thought of it that way. It was just trendy and fashionable to become Americanized and become mainstream by picking up jargon, which he didn't fully appreciate what was happening by just using this jargon. That maybe he understood the difference, so he had kind of reinvented soul for himself, but that's not necessarily how the audience is going to take it. So one of the ways that difference can be preserved is through certain Sanskrit words like Atman, like Brahman, like moksha and nirvana, as opposed to salvation. Because salvation has a different metaphysics behind it. Salvation is from a condition of sin. So moksha is from a condition of limited perception, limited cognition, ignorance. So when you innocently give up some Sanskrit words which are non-translatable actually, and you translate them into something that is trendy and will make you more popular as a guru, and you'll have more Westerners coming to you, you're actually doing a disservice to the Dharma, and you're also misleading, in a sense, the Westerners into thinking that it's the same thing, or they're imagining that they're being invited into a movement which has large similarities as their own tradition, when in fact, at some point in time, they'll be facing some hard choices.
So it's maintaining authenticity through language.
Yes, and I speak English, and I write in English. I think it's a wonderful language. So my goal is to bring about 50 to 100 Sanskrit words and make them part of the English language. So that we can speak in English, but use those words. Like the word yoga is already there.
Yeah.
So yoga, luckily, did not get translated as gymnastics or exercise or prayer. None of those things would capture yoga. So yoga, the reason there is such a passion for yoga is that the word is there, which compels people to look deeper and understand what it means. So if you take an item and preserve, and which has a lot of depth of context in it, and you preserve the original word which contains all of those meanings, all the nuances in it, then in the beginning people may not understand all those contexts, but gradually it will begin to unravel. So introducing a word of that kind is like planting a seed which will sprout. So I think that one of my techniques is to introduce back into the mainstream vernacular, both among Indian Americans and Hindus, and also among Westerners who are from the Abrahamic traditions, certain Sanskrit words, and explain how they're different and why using these words is important in order to capture the essence of that.